morning, everyone, and thanks for hanging out with us this morning. Um, we're getting ready to give you truly a sneak peek because what you're going to see from each of us is 10 minutes each on what we dive into for actually 2 days each to give you in-depth knowledge of how to be successful in this federal space. So let me just start real quick with the first pillar, and that is building trust relationships. It's extremely important to build relationships in the federal space if you're going to be successful. Uh, the thought of going in and just selling, just getting to know people just one time and think that you're going to be successful, that doesn't work. So I'm going to be real quick with these couple of slides and an overview. First of all, there are four types of business developers, and this has been substantiated by all my CIO and CFO buddies. The first type shows up at all the events. They just go to everything. They're at breakfast, lunch, and dinner. They're at every conference. They're everywhere, but they don't really build any kind of relationships or make anything happen. Type two, those are the ones who can find out what opportunities are coming and they attend events. They use some of the tools where they can learn about what's going on, and they don't really build relationships, but they do know that certain opportunities are coming out at certain times. The third type, those are the ones who do finally start understanding the customer and the customer's needs. They are really starting to make a difference. And at that level, they are very high energy, they're very positive, and they engage in the events, they work in those associations and in the events. They do build relationships, but they don't know how to close the business. They really don't know how to get the yes from the customer. um, and so we got a lot of those, a ton of those, but they really are lacking in being able to close business. And so we want to get all of those types to type four. And type four is consistent success. They do everything right. They go to the events, they do all those things, but they also get to, they know how to close the business. They are the ones who are viewed as a trusted partner by the federal customer that they're serving, and they know what opportunities are coming out. They know how to assess those opportunities. They know how to truly connect to the customer, not just talk to the customer, but to make the connection. And they know how to close the deal. So those are the four types we spend a lot of time getting everybody from type one, type two, type three to trying to make everybody a type four. Next slide, please. So there are phases that you have to go through to become that type four. If you're really going to be the type four, you have to go through every one of these 8 phases. Some people think that business development is simply just show up and do a quick PowerPoint presentation and you've done it, or show up at the lunches. But no, there are these phases that must be accomplished. The first thing, you have to understand the business environment that you're working in. What are the pain points? What is the business doing? What are their priorities? What are they really trying to do? And more important than that, how do the various components of government influence what you're trying to sell? Most business developers don't understand that. And they miss big opportunities because they don't understand how the components of government are involved in what they're trying to get done. Secondly, you got to understand the procurement rules. For a lot of reasons, you got to write those proposals right. You got to abide by the rules. And you got to impress government through the mechanisms that they give you to impress them with what you're bringing to the table. You'll hear a lot more about that. Third thing, you need to understand who's who. There are a lot of people in the government that you're going to be working with, but the question is, who do you really need to know, and uh, how do you get to know them? So that's very important for you to understand that. Thirdly, know how to build the relationships. I'm sorry, fourth, know how to build those relationships that you need. So now you know who the people are. But how am I going to build true relationships with them? I will tell you firsthand that when as a CIO, and I was CIO for 10 years at two federal agencies, both at Education and HUD, and I've been friends with many CIOs and CFOs. We all talk about how we can tell when people attempt to build relationships with us, and we know that they're not real relationships. You want to know us for the moment that you're trying to move a widget, and it comes through loud and clear. How do you build real relationships? Relationships that are going to benefit you and it's going to benefit the customer. The fifth thing that you need to make sure you know how to do is create the mindset of a trusted partner. So when I say the mindset of a trusted partner, the mindset is not to go in and sell your widget. The mindset is to go in and help solve a problem. And we teach you how to do that, how to create that mindset. But we also want to make sure that when you're creating that trusted partner relationship, that you're doing all the right things to impress that customer that you are the one that they want to have that relationship with. You want to be the one that they call back in every time they want somebody to present what's going on. So you gotta, we call that the trusted partner. Sometimes when I was teaching sales at IBM for a period of time, we called it the vendor of choice. But it's to be that trusted partner that that customer consistently reaches out to and brings you in. I've had a lot of my clients say to me, well, why won't customers call me back like I see them calling other people back? They call back the people that they view as their trusted partner who can help them solve problems and not just sell widgets. To do all of that, you also have to do your research. A lot of people that I work with don't know how to do the research. That is, I'm going to say, other than all of these are extremely important, but one of the biggest um, drawbacks that I see business developers facing is they don't really know how to do research. One of the nicest things about the federal government is they put a lot of information out because they have to make this is public information. They make it available to everybody, but I'm surprised at how many of my clients don't know where to go to look for that research. I'm looking at clients a lot who will spend a lot of time trying to develop their own justifications for what they're trying to sell, when in fact that justification has probably been written up already by the government agency you're trying to sell to, or by the White House, or by Congress, or somebody has already put that justification in place, and you just have to know how to go find it and then use that to enhance your justification. Um, so we teach you how to do all the research where all those things are located. And then seventh thing that you have to do in this process is know how to get a meeting. Many of you spend tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars with consultants and other people trying to get them to help you get a meeting when you really can get that meeting on your own. And we teach you how to do that. There are certain things that messaging that you need to understand and master in order to get those meetings with that customer. So it's very important to understand the steps, the process that you go through to get that meeting. And finally, becoming, once you've gotten a meeting, you got to be an expert at conducting that meeting. And there are several steps that you follow in a meeting that you know you're walking through. The customer may not know that you're walking through these certain steps to conduct that meeting and win, but you really do plan and conduct a meeting based on some steps that we teach you how to go through. And then at the end of that, you win and the customer wins. So that's a part of building trust. That's, we teach 2 days of this, but we get into great depth, and I'm real excited to just share those few sneak peeks with you. And now I'll turn it over to Mike Rice to talk about what's happening on the back end while the business developer is out there building these relationships.
Thank you, Gloria. By the way, folks, I've worked with Gloria for almost 10 years, and every time she talks, I learn something. And just appreciate her wisdom and her knowledge and her willingness to teach. And it's been exciting. Yeah, Gloria kind of talked to you a lot about, massaging and building those relationships. And as opportunities begin to bubble up, that's usually business developer by business developer by executive. A lot of what I do is take a look at what goes on in the back office. It's that engine, it's that life cycles that capture practice. And just a real quick before I get into it itself, I worked in large business and worked in small business. And I remember going to a large business and basically being immersed in a very rigorous capture practice. Very Shipley centric, very expensive. There were certain things that we did on a daily basis. I went back to small business and realized small business doesn't really have anything that's really been tailored for them. And that kind of resulted in, first it resulted in a mind map, and then turned into a course, and then ended up being a book. And where we actually took a look at those practices that large businesses use. And frankly, folks, there's a CMM level for business development, believe it or not. And it produces high P wins and it identifies opportunities really early, what to chase, what not to chase. And when I went back to small business, I realized small business really didn't have much. I mean, their biggest practice in capture was writing proposals, and that was it. So that's when we put the In Pursuit business development life cycle together. You're going to see relationships. Just real quick, you can see relationships between every one of our practices, which is really kind of cool. There's an overlap between Gloria and what I teach and what I teach and what Tom teaches. And then when William gets in here, you're going to see the big picture, which is really going to be incredible. Anyway, so what I did was I took a look at this big practice and said, okay, what can small businesses grasp? What can they afford? And so I broke it down into basically 6 phases: an identify phase, a qualify phase, a capture phase, a proposal phase, post-proposal, and post-award. And there's lots of activity that go on in between all those. And then we're going to wrap that up in a second. And really in the identify phase, you're managing your pipeline. It's that simple. You're taking a look at opportunities, trying to qualify them early. You're taking a look at your corporate capabilities. How are you aligned with the industry? How are you aligned with this customer? You're taking a look at the customer really quick, finding out what their commitment level is to this particular acquisition. And then if you're looking at your competition, the first people you look at is the incumbent. You ask some very simple questions to find out how strong the incumbent is in the eyes of the customer. But it really is about managing that pipeline. It's really about identifying opportunities quickly, and frankly, learning to throw opportunities away. Okay, and I'll come back to that thought in a second. Then you move into the qualify, and wrote a paper a few years ago, qualify. Frankly, you're qualifying in the entire life cycle. And this is really where we're actually taking a look a little bit closer at the opportunity itself. We're looking a little bit more at the competition. We're looking hard at our past performers. We're answering the question. This is, can we win? So identify, is this opportunity real? Well, of course it's real, Mike. It's out there. Well, not necessarily. It may not be real for you. Okay. And then in capture, you're answering that question, can we win this? And we have to ask that question. And before I go any farther than that, this is the biggest struggle, I think, for small businesses. Small businesses get started, they have an incredible technical background. They're usually engineers, started by engineers, and they can do the work. There's no question whether they can do the work or not, but can they win the work? And that's the hardest question to do. And it's hard for a small business to walk away from business. But really, the goal is to have real revenue potential opportunities within our pipeline. And that's what the qualifying phase really does. So yeah, ask that question, can we win this? And then once we decide that yes, then we move into the fun phase. I mean, I'm an engineer. So as an engineer, capture was always the fun part for me because, this is where I'm sitting and I'm looking at, the program intelligence. I'm looking at what the offer design is going to look like, what our themes and strategies are for capture are going to be, looking at our key personnel, taking a look a little bit at the solicitation and begin to shred it and understand what the solicitation is. And begin to move forward. In the pricing realm, here we start teaching you how to do price to win strategies. And once we get through that capture phase, again, in qualified, can we win? Capture is, how are we going to win? And we ask all those hard questions of actually building that approach. And it really is the approach part. Then we move into proposal. And once we proposal, and I push this, and if you read my book, I say it over and over again. Compliance first, then compelling. I want you to remember something. If you're not compliant, they cannot award you the contract. Okay, so you got to be compliant first. But this is when we begin to take all those capture strategies and turn it into a product. Okay, and when I talk about a product, this is important to think about. The proposal itself, we already know we're used to multiple volume proposals. Okay, and William might talk about this. William, I don't want to speak for you, but I'm going to say this right now. The federal government is getting really, really creative in how they're putting the anatomy of a solicitation together. Okay, and there are going to be phases that you can go through some of these solicitations, and you're going to see orals play a big role in the future. And we're all seeing the technical challenges and those types of things. So when we talk about the proposal phase, we're taking a look at that package. What is that product that we're putting together that we're going to submit to win this deal? Then we move into the post-proposal. Okay, this is where we have to deal with BAFOs. This is where we have to deal with clarification questions. Let me say something. You get a BAFO request, that's a good sign. You get a clarification from the government, that's a good sign. And these are all good things to learn how to respond. I want you to be careful how to respond. We teach you how to be careful. Make sure you're not compromising your pricing. There's a whole practice in there, a discipline inside actually dealing with BAFOs and dealing with clarification questions. Orals practice. Okay, a lot of times orals comes after you submit the proposal. So we have a whole section on coaching orals and doing orals practice. And then finally, we move into post-award. And post-award is really about preparing for that next win. Okay, well, what have we lost? Well, you're preparing for your next win. You're making a request for a debrief. We show you how to craft questions for a debrief, make sure the debrief is not anything that's threatening to the contracting officer, how you get that debrief and what do you do with that debrief. We walk through what if we win? You're preparing for your next win. Tom's going to talk about this, okay? Even though I win, guess what I'm going to ask for? A debrief. I want a debrief. I want to know how to do better the next time. And this goes into what I put down at the bottom of this slide, and I'll leave it with this. One of the things that the life cycle tries to do is that it's two key qualities of this particular life cycle. The first one is plug and play. Okay, Mike, what do you mean plug and play? Hey, it's just a big map of processes. I do proposals a certain way. If you don't like the way we do proposals, put your proposal process in there. Take one out, plug yours in. As long as you've got a process that you follow, okay? So the idea is that once you take this life cycle, once you get out of our class, you can take it home and make it your own. And I think that's really important. The second thing is that we really support continuous capture improvement. Why do we have all that debriefing and that retrospective in the post-award phase? Because I want to do better. I want to prepare for my next win. We ask those tough questions. Maybe I had the wrong capture manager. Maybe the graphics weren't very good. Maybe our narrative wasn't right. We look at all those things, okay? And the idea is to make the capture even better as you go through the life cycle. And I actually moved from a framework, okay, from front to back to a life cycle when we added that continuous capture improvement. So with that, folks, you're preparing for the win. You're preparing for the next win, and you're always looking to make it better and make it our own. So that's what that class is really about. We do talk about everything. We go into pricing, we go into wrap rates, how they're put together. How do you put together a basis of estimate? We try to go through all those things that you're going to be up against as a small business. I mean, even as a large business. Typically, large business have pricing folks that this is their specialty. So with that, I just won this contract. Yes, I just won. Now I'm taking it and I'm passing it off to my program management folks in the service delivery. And oh, by the way, business development doesn't end here. And I'm gonna let Tom talk about that next. Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, thanks, Mike. Great intro for myself and what I cover. It's really all about maximizing that return on investment. You've just spent all this time. You went through the business development process, capture and proposal, probably put a lot of resources into this. You've won the contract. Congratulations. Now what? Normally, I might do this in an interactive basis, but given the virtual nature and stuff, what I'm going to do is ask you 5 questions. You don't have to write anything down, but think through how you would answer these 5 questions, and then I'm going to discuss what we go over in the course at a real high level of how do we address some of these questions. So you just want a 5-year contract. Question number 1. When should you begin to think about your contract recompete during that 5-year cycle? That's question number 1. Think through how you'd answer that. So you've won the contract. Are there actions that you can take to improve the chance that you're going to retain that contract when it's recompeted? Are those the same actions that you need to take to drive organic growth? So what do you need to do to retain the contract when it's recompeted? And what do you do to drive organic growth? Are they the same things? Do you even understand what you might need to do? Gloria and Mike talked about the marketing, the capture. Who's best positioned in your company to understand the customer's needs at this point once the contract's awarded? Is it the company leadership if you're a small company, especially think through that? Is it your BD team? Is it the capture team who put the proposal together? Or is it your operations team? This is usually a fun question. Who's seen Miracle on 34th Street? And what does that have to do with organic growth? So, hold on to that thought. And then finally, after contract award, who is the most important person in the company? Is it the contracting officer? Is it the CEO? Is it the PM? I'll go through some brief answers on these, and you can see if you agree with me or not. So the recompete, when do you start thinking about the recompete? If you answered anything other than at contract award, you're behind. Your competition's going to note when this was awarded. They're going to identify it potentially as something in their pipeline. They're going to figure out when they need to start talking to the customer. You need to start well, right? You only get one chance to make that first impression. You need to hit transition out of the ballpark. You need to set the baseline for meeting customers' needs, good communications during transition. So you need to start thinking about, how am I going to retain this customer from day one? You can't wait. You can't put that off. What actions do you need to take to drive the customer to be thinking of you as somebody they want to win the recompete, right? What actions do you need to take to drive organic growth? They're not the same thing. You need to understand the different drivers, and I go over that in the course. And these things don't just happen because you want them to. Mike talked about you have an engineer that you put on the contract. Have they been trained in any of this? Do they really know how to run a contract from a government perspective? And they need to understand that government perspective. A few statistics to consider here. 90% of companies claim that they're customer-centric. 10% of their customers agree with that. Somewhere between 40 to 70% of customers switch loyalty due to a perceived attitude of indifference. You're just another customer. They won the contract. The BD and capture teams go away and they leave you with this really smart subject matter expert engineer, but does he understand what drives customer satisfaction? We all, I think, recognize the win rates for contract recompetes has been going down. Used to be back in 8, 9, 10 years ago, close to 75% for some contract types, especially small business. It's down below 50% now of contractors winning the recompetes. So customer needs. Who's going to have more customer intimacy? The PM on the ground or your BD team that visits the customer 4 times a year? How do you cultivate that intimacy? Does your PM know how to leverage that? Does your operations team know how to identify opportunities for organic growth? They see the competition coming in the door because they're on the ground. What do you do with that information? Do you do anything with that information? You need to recognize these opportunities and figure out how the BD team works with that program management team and the operations team on the ground to leverage those to really maximize your return on investment. My question about the Miracle on 34th Street. This one may not be so obvious. As you may recall, Chris Kringle started sending customers to Gimbals, Macy's biggest competitor, because Macy's didn't carry a certain toy. Well, this so impressed one of the customers that she went to the toy department manager and said, "You have a customer for life." Can you imagine if you can come up with a way to have your customers say to you, I'm your customer for life. You've done such a good job at customer satisfaction. Uh, you need to be that person like Gloria and Mike both talked about. You want to become that trusted partner. Your program manager and your operations team need to become those trusted advisors. You know a guy, you know a company. You may not be sending your customers to a competitor, but you may know somebody that you can bring on the team to help them. You want to be placing yourself in a position to always assist the customer. I took that approach when I was running contracts as a federal contractor, and I achieved anywhere from 5 to 20% growth on average. Uh, you want to be solving your customers' requests, basically. And finally, wrap up with the most important person. Doesn't matter how good a job your BD team did, you won the contract. The program manager is king. They're the one on the ground. They're the face of the company for that customer. You need to make sure they understand how to deliver on customer needs, customer satisfaction, how to run a contract correctly, the nuts and bolts of managing the contracts so that the customer looks good. Because after all, our job as federal contractors is to make the customer feel good and look good and make things easy for them. Mike talked about identify and qualify. Who better than your PM to identify and qualify potentials for organic growth, right? They're on the ground every day. As I said before, they see the competitors coming in. They know what the competition can do, or you can help them understand that. You need to train your entire service delivery team on these concepts. They need to work in concert with BD, the company executives, to help make everybody's a success. None of this just happens. I had to learn this stuff the hard way uh, from both a federal perspective when I was a Fed and then as a service delivery manager as a contractor. It doesn't just happen organically. You need to either learn the lessons the hard way or be trained in how to, deliver effectively, understand, communicate effectively. Of course, none of this matters unless you can win the contract in the first place. Uh, you need to also have some training for your program manager, at least, if not the operations team. What's important in that acquisition life cycle? One of the things that's my mantra is have the PM read the contract from beginning to end. They may be the only one that does that. You'd be surprised on the government side, you have a team that puts things together. On the contractor side, the contract comes out, it gets split up between pricing and technical solutions and stuff. You need to understand the acquisition, have that PM read the contract. Understand the procurement rules, which ties right into William. And with that, I think I can wrap up and hand it off to William, talk about the acquisition side of things for us.
Awesome. Thank you, Tom. I really appreciate it. So folks, I'd love to think that acquisition is like the glue that puts all of this together. But I think there's probably a better analogy, and that is acquisition is the game board that you have to play on. There are lots of pieces. You're going to hear a lot of tactical things from my colleagues, but my desire is to share with you the way things need to work and move on the game board. This is indeed chess, not checkers. So when you think about the federal acquisition insights, there are a couple of things. There's one big theme that I'd like to frame this out with, and that is there are seasons to this. Okay, from an acquisition perspective, there are seasons to this, and then there are activities that align with the seasons. Just as we don't snow ski in the summer and we don't go to the beach in the winter, there are activities that align to the various phases of the acquisition life cycle. So when you think about laying business development on top of that game board, the strategy here is to define and then articulate strategy in the seasons and the activities. So the things you're going to be talking about, there are about 9 of them that we're going to be talking about in the course. The first is just the guiding principle. Why in the heck do we do this thing called federal government contracting? So we dive all the way to the foundation and build up from a standpoint of understanding the federal acquisition system. Okay, having that baseline understanding is, in my opinion, critical to being able to articulate and then move effectively on the game board. Two strategies within that principle is, we talk about the big A acquisition framework. Big A is the big time acquisition. That's everything from appropriations and authorizations in Congress to budgets to programs, how programs are set up, and all of the things that happen in a big A programmatic space. That's budget, all of the activities, budget, program management, security, all the things that are necessary to deliver a significant program. Little a is the contracting piece. And when you think about the contracting piece, this is the tactical, how to go through the process of the contracting process, everything from requirements definition to contract closeout. That's the little pieces. The next is the market research and intelligence. How does the government get smarter? How do they evolve their requirements? These are the ways, and we're going to talk about many of the ways and some of the new ways people that the government has been leaning into increasing their level of market research and market intelligence. The next would be requirements definition. Okay, when you think about SUs, SALs, and PWSs, okay, when are they used? When are they most appropriately used? How are programs now using demonstrations and challenges to increase their level of knowledge in their requirements? So moving from a mission-based demand signal to being able to articulate a mission need in such a fashion that the marketplace can react to it. That requirements definition insight, we're going to dive deep into that. Solicitation and proposal activities, oh, that's the bread and butter. Okay, that's how does industry and government interact with each other? What are they saying? How do you read between the lines? Those are the pieces that are very, very important. That's really the superpower. Once you learn the tactical and then understand the seasons, how do you execute the activities in that space to be effective? Source selection strategies. How do we pick winners and losers? Okay, how does the government pick winners and losers? Okay. Taking people down the funnel from a standpoint of thinking about source selection as a funnel. Everybody gets to play at the top. And then how do we come down the strategy? How do we come down the strategies, the source selection strategy funnel? And how, as industry participants, do you effectively play? Do you understand what the funnel is asking of you? And then how to respond to it? Post-award foundations. Now you've been successful. You've effectively come down the source selection funnel and you've been chosen as a successful offerer. How do you start laying the groundwork early for those post-award foundations? And more importantly, those contracting officer representative engagements. How does that person become your best friend, ally, and partner in this journey of government contracting? And then the last piece, last but certainly not least, is that the contract management leadership insights. What's happening inside the government? Okay, from a standpoint of how does the leadership connect? How do we make these moves happen? Okay, what's happening, and then what are the leadership insights that can be gleaned from that? Not only from interacting with government, but also interacting inside your various organizations. How can you map and marry your activities to those in the government space? So those are the themes of the Federal Acquisition Insights, the Acquisition Lifecycle Framework course. These are the large building block, big muscle movement themes. I spent 26 years on the government side of the table as a contracting officer. And I remember those interactions those business development interactions that I had when we had office hours or just got the phone call or somebody wanted to come in and talk. And I can tell you less than half of them were actually value add. They were effective, that there was a good information exchange in that environment. So now that I'm on the other side of the table and I have an opportunity to share what marginal could look like, I want to really show you what exceptional can be. This is what we're going to be doing in this course, is defining the seasons, understanding the activities, and then how to play those activities well. This is really about the when and the who, okay? Who are the role players? Who should you know? Who should you build relationships with? How to build relationships with them? And then what activities should you be playing at various seasons in the game? Okay, this is so very, very important. Okay, and I believe if we learn this, if we understand all of the dynamics of what's going on in the acquisition lifecycle framework, then this is truly the superpower. This elevates all of the other activities in the business development life cycle, that now you could take those skills and apply them to the game board and win for your organizations. I thank you so much for the opportunity. And Mike, back to you.
Thank you, William. Okay, I want to kind of show something here. William, I love what you just presented. First of all, because you are kind of wrapping up what Gloria began, okay? And it's the who's and the how's and the why's we need to talk to these folks. And I remember a long time ago being reminded, do not forget to talk to the contracting officer. And I know that through OFPP, contracting officers are being encouraged to talk to industry, and we need to learn how to talk to them. And I just love this, and I love the game board concept. That's just incredible. What I wanted to do is kind of show you something up here, folks, and kind of show how all this kind of relates to one another. These were presented in pillars, but in reality, they all kind of work together. And we put this Venn diagram together to kind of show where you look at establishing trust relationships and Gloria's piece, and we call that our business development. Basically, that's our business development piece to the courseware. It kind of passes off into capture, and that's the business development lifecycle. That's what I teach. And you notice that, and I kind of alluded to this. The identification and the qualification processes are really in that circle. This is the kind of the juxtaposition. I said that was hard to say after 3 cups of coffee, of these two practices, okay? And so identify and qualify are all part of that. Look, when we start moving into post-proposal and post-award, I start to move into service delivery and passing off to the service delivery module that Tom teaches. He talked about the importance of that transition. You got to, and transition planning happens in, and we actually talk about in my class, it happens in post-proposal and post-award. You're working on actually post-proposal. You really think about it. You got to do your due diligence at that point in time, and it passes it off. And then Tom brought up some excellent questions about, who is best to be able to come back to. He was funny. He talked about the program management folks. I'm talking to business developers. BDers out there, if you're not working with your PMs, you're missing out on opportunities, straight up. You just are, okay? And PMs, if you're not including your BDs, you're putting yourself at risk for your recompete, okay? So the importance of these teams beginning to work with one another. And then really in the service delivery, in Gloria's class, she teaches you how to build those relationships. In my class, I teach you how to convert that or translate that relationship into a winning proposal. In service delivery, we're teaching how do you maintain those relationships? And oh, by the way, expand those relationships. Once you're on the floor, okay, you might be working with the CXO, but when you're on the floor running, you're expanding those relationships. You're looking for other opportunities. There are other lines of business and missions out there that could use your services. That's your job, to be able to expand those relationships. And then I love the whole picture of being able to lay acquisition. Okay, I'm going to say this, either on top of it or underneath of it. I think it fits both. Okay. I think underneath of it, we need to understand how that game's being played. We got to understand the game board itself. Learn where in the season the acquisition is in, and that's important too in identifying and qualifying things. But at the same time, lay it on top. It's always there. It's always something that we have to be aware of. So it all fits. It all fits, and I think this is what makes this set of classes unique, because nobody talks about all four. Okay, you're gonna get maybe some sales classes someplace. Okay, where you're gonna go learn how to build a good capture practice within your business. Okay, we can teach you who rolls business development into service delivery. Okay, and oh, by the way, who's teaching you as industry? Who's teaching you how acquisition really works within the federal government? Okay, a lot of resources, but we found a way to pull them all together and come up with something that if you make the investment, you're gonna have business developers. You're gonna all be type 4s because you're gonna know things that most people don't know. Okay, and that's the cool part. I'm gonna be perfectly honest. As I moved into this, I was a type 3 business developer. I'll be transparent, honest there. And the more I learned about this, I started to understand, that was the missing piece for me. Okay, and I was able to move into that type 4 business developer because of understanding the other 3 pieces. So yeah, I just want to wrap up a little bit with see the relationships, see how they fit together, see the value of how they fit together, and see what the return on investment is going to be for you when you make the investment here.